Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet, and today we are going to be talking about fake news. Why? Well, because fake news has been around for a long time. It's only just recently become codified and proliferated. And since the man, the myth, the legend who made it such a priority topic in America is going to be leaving his throne of power very, very shortly, I thought maybe we should cover this on his way out the door. Now, I think it's fair to assume that there has been one form or another of fake news for as long as there has been society and techniques and ways in which to communicate, whether that be through written language, pantomime, or the spoken word. And also throughout history, there have been ways to deal with proliferation of fake news. Granted, a lot of those probably had to do with swords and axes and guillotines, but there were mechanisms in place to deal with those who created and proliferated fake news, which ultimately just serves to destabilize a society. Now, more often than not, the cycle this works its way through in a culture is somebody or something proliferates some horrible fake news that leads to a horrible tragedy. Generally, after that happens, the government or groups or citizenry or some combination of all of them will get together and they will eliminate the source of fake news, and then they will put up safeguards to protect against it. And then, people fall into a pattern, they get lazy, they sleep on it, fake news pops up again, boom. And it's like a game of whack-a-mole. Of course, the 2016 election, with Donald Trump standing on the sidelines over at Fox News and then proliferating the declaration of fake news, sort of made it our moment. This is in many ways no different than when the War of the Worlds broadcast went out on radio and people actually thought they were being invaded by aliens. To prove my point, I want to show you a study, a statistic, and then we're going to get into exactly what the effects of Donald Trump have been on the news cycle and what the news cycle looks like now that he no longer has a very loud megaphone nor a bully pulpit to stand upon. Now, this headline was written based on a survey done in 2019, and in that survey, 86% of people surveyed said that they have been exposed to fake news. The poll of over 25,000 interviews in over 25 economies finds that 86% of people believe they've been exposed to fake news. Among them, nearly 9 in 10 report having initially believed that the news was real at least once. Indeed, the results suggest that misinformation is woven deep within the fabric of social media, most notably on Facebook, where as many as 2/3 report encountering fake news. Other common sources of fake news include social media platforms more generally, websites, YouTube, and even television. 51% of people saying that that is where they have encountered fake news. I have a feeling that a lot of this has to do with what you deem to be fake news, because if 51% of people say they've encountered fake news on television, more than likely it's because they are people who believe that anything they don't like is fake news. And again, that is a unique problem having to do with the orange shit gibbon dating back to 2016. And don't worry, we're going to get into that in just a second. The vast majority think fake news is made worse by the internet and negatively impacts political discourse in their country. Among those who feel it has negatively impacted politics in their country, there's plenty of blame to go around when it comes to the source of fake news, with a multitude of economies viewed as being responsible for its disruptive effects, led of course by the United States, Russia, and China. Look at us, 35%, Russia 12%, China 9%. We're number one. We're number one. We're number one. Suck it, Russia and China. There is considerable variation by economy, however, with Canadians, Turks, and Americans themselves among the most likely to hold the U.S. responsible. Yes, people in more than 25 countries were interviewed for this survey, and among them all, even Americans were like, dude, Americans are fucked up. There is so much fake news coming out of there. Woo! This isn't a new problem. This is just the newest iteration of a problem that continuously pops up. And laws eventually get put into place. This is why we have laws against slander. This is why we have laws against libel. This is why we have laws against inciting riots and insurrection. It's not surprising then that most global citizens back countermeasures aimed at curbing fake news, particularly ones involving social media, with well over 4 in 5 supporting the termination of social media and video sharing service accounts linked to fake news, as well as the removal of fake news posts or tweets on social media and video sharing service sites. Now, of course, the joy of America and free speech and fake news is that while 84% of these survey respondents would say, yes, we should definitely eliminate sources of fake news, if they themselves were deemed to be the source of fake news and were removed, 84% of them would scream and hoop and holler about their freedom of speech and how America is just a bunch of fascists because liberty. And this is the inherent problem with the whole free speech dilemma. Yes, the Constitution says that the government cannot create any laws or regulations to stifle free speech. It doesn't say anything about people. It doesn't say anything about groups. Yes, there's a larger conversation to be had about what the spirit of it was, or what it's really intended to do, or how many laws have not caught up with technology since the writing of the archaic Constitution. And I don't disagree with any of this. But what I do disagree with is just allowing people and groups and pages and corporations and entire platforms to just give carte blanche to people to say whatever they want without repercussions. Now, back in the day, every single tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist would find their way to the National Enquirer. It was essentially a newspaper format publication that you'd find right at the checkout line at your grocery store next to People magazine, and everybody knew what it was. It was always the magazine that had the grainy black and white picture of Bigfoot on the front that said another Bigfoot sighting. And you'd read it and it would talk about UFOs and a bunch of other stuff that was fantastical, but you knew it was conspiracy theories. Granted, there was a very small sliver of the population that were sure that shit was real, much like 15-year-old boys who thought that wrestling was actually real. And it just becomes a societal norm where you accept that this is the fake news portion of life where people get a certain amount of relief from everyday stress and then they move on. However, social media has made it so that fake news and real news are now consumed in the same place. This would be like if Time magazine had the National Enquirer printed inside of it on every other page. And now, no matter what social media platforms do, they're screwed. If they ban bad sources, bad people, and bad actors, people will scream that they're fascists. But if they don't, people would scream that they're aiding and abetting fascists by not shutting down fascists from having access. Now, in recent months, mostly due to Donald Trump, social media platforms have begun tagging posts and pieces of content that say this may be fake news or this is under dispute. And while this has been a step in the right direction, apparently it hasn't been enough. So people have been coming up with ways to help drive the point home some more. New research shows that bold visual warnings are needed to keep people from clicking on fake news. Large, bright visual cues that can be easily recognized by readers regardless of their reading level or language. Their research shows that using large visual blocks that can be easily identified seem to be doing a much better job of keeping people from clicking on fake news in their studies than they do out and about in the real world. And in this, they bring up the very good point that traffic signs are codified for the same reason, so that no matter where you're from, when you see a stop sign, no matter what language it's written in, whether or not you can even see the text written on it, if it's dark at night, if it's not reflective, it doesn't matter. You notice the color pattern and the shape, and because you've seen it so many times, you know it means stop even if you don't actually read the word stop. And this is what researchers are now proposing for social media. Of course, I think this is a great idea. I have parents and grandparents too. I don't like the idea of my mom being sucked into a cult on Facebook, or my dad getting chain emails and then deciding he's going to start writing out $1,000 monthly checks to some orange shit gibbon down in Florida who keeps blathering about possibly sending him an autographed hat. But I also want social media to be free. I want everybody to be able to enjoy and appreciate social media. Now, of course, you can't just make a tinfoil hat section of the media, put it up and go, hey, if anybody has anything tinfoil hatty, just go over there. That's your section. Because, of course, that's no fun. The best part of being tinfoil hatty is tinfoil hat pilling other people so that you have co-conspirators and other people who believe in the same bullshit you do. So in the interim, while we try to find the happy medium between regulation, labeling, safety, and education, there is apparently one surefire way already on the books to eliminate the spread of fake news. And it's called taking away Donald Trump's social media. Hey, don't blame me. I don't write the headlines or do the statistics, okay? I just read the stuff. Online misinformation about the US election fell 73% after Trump's social media ban. What? According to findings by Signal Labs, conversations about election fraud fell from 2.5 million mentions to 688,000 mentions across several social media sites. The research house looked at conversations that spanned fraud, hacked machines, tampered ballots, and other conspiracies. Those are fake news. The data indicates that tech platforms' ability to restrict the spread of falsehoods is an effective approach to containing misinformation online. Yeah, it's kind of like restricting the spread of a plague. And if you get that plague when it first blows up and you sort of just, cordon it off from everybody else, the plague doesn't spread. However, if you just let the plague spread unabated without any sort of restrictions and you let it, crawl around through the populace without wearing masks or any sort of protections, then the plague infects everybody. That sounds familiar. Signal monitored social media sites for misinformation during the 7 days from January 9th. The U.S. Capitol riots took place on January 6th. Trump was suspended from Facebook the following day and banned from Twitter on January 8th. And Trump allies, including former U.S. Army Lieutenant Michael Flynn, pro-Trump lawyer Sidney Powell, were also banned from Twitter. Ron Watkins, considered a key QAnon figure online, was likewise suspended. So essentially, by eliminating half a dozen people on the face of the planet from a few social media platforms, 3/4 of all fake news mentions about the election results just vanished. It's almost like Donald Trump was the Pied Piper of bullshit, and if social media platforms had taken the fucking flute out of his hand a little goddamn earlier, we wouldn't all be inundated with swarms of plague rats. Signal found that hashtags relating to the Capitol riots fell dramatically during the week after these suspensions. Mentions of the hashtags Fight for Trump, Hold the Line, and the phrase March for Trump all fell around 95%. QAnon-specific hashtags also fell the week after Trump was suspended from Twitter, though mentions of the conspiracy and its supposed figurehead Q went up. I'm going to assume most of that was due to people writing articles with titles somewhere along the lines of, "Thank God they got rid of these Q nutters so I don't have to read their bullshit online and my grandma doesn't turn into a cultist." Trump pushed a number of baseless claims about the U.S. election through 2020, particularly pushing false claims that mail-in ballots were fraudulent or unreliable. His tweets often went viral ahead of the election, despite Twitter slapping his messages with warning tags and click-through blocks. Well, no, because by that point, Trump had been blathering so much bullshit on Twitter for 4 or 5 years that people who were hooked on his bullshit, so they ignored the warnings. Meanwhile, all the centrist, neoliberal, blue checkmark shitbags on Twitter who constantly fucking shared his stuff to be ironic edgelords, all they did was serve to proliferate the bullshit even more. Now, neither of those groups are benefiting from Donald Trump, and frankly, my life is much better for it. Even as the election was called for President Joe Biden on November 6th, Trump continued to claim the election had been stolen. He's going to stick to that claim till the day he dies. With the Biden administration inevitable, social media sites have finally taken widespread action against Trump and those peddling QAnon conspiracy theories. After Trump was booted from Twitter and suspended from Facebook and YouTube, right-wingers flocked to alternative social network Parler. Its app was banned by both Apple and Google, and the service subsequently went offline after Amazon revoked its hosting services. Part of Parler is now back online. It's being hosted on Russian servers and being propped up through some slapdash Russian code. Da, comrade, da. Come to Parler. Trump, meanwhile, has yet to find an avenue as effective as his own Twitter account to blast out claims of election fraud. He attempted to switch to the official POTUS account, posted a video to official White House channels, and his campaign has sent out texts and email blasts. But no, nothing has the same amount of reach. Why? Because all the liberals who like to mockingly retweet his shit aren't on his email list, so they don't have the same reach. And the only people who share chain emails are 60 and over, and they only share those with other people who are 60 and over. Now, before anybody flips out, I am not calling for completely banning people every time they put something up that somebody else doesn't like. Again, I've been banned from Twitter for almost 2 years. So no, this is not the long-term solution. But I'm sure as shit not going to cry about it either. It remains to be seen what President Joe Biden's going to do, but hopefully there are some voices of wisdom somewhere in his cabinet, because we're going to have to find a suitable middle ground to solve this problem, or else we are going to just continuously become dumber and dumber as a nation. My name is James. I'm from the internet and I'm out. Peace.